I'm just gonna get right into it. Congrats on the film. The huge, I guess, reboot or sequel. I guess we could get more into that
The new
later.
beginning. It's a new beginning.
Is it? Okay. So can you actually tell us a little bit about it without giving too much away?
Sure,
Or
of course,
yeah.
of course. So The Exorcist Believer is a new beginning for the Exorcist franchise, which started 50 years ago with The Exorcist. So there have been lots of movies in between, but our movie, Exorcist Believer, really harkens back to the original, as if the others never happened. It's the only movie that actually has Ellen Bernstein, who is you know, in the original and in ours. 50-year spread with the same character, which is fantastic. And David Gordon Green has really reimagined it while keeping the same essence of the original. So it's very smart, it's very scary, and there's double the fun because now it's not just one little girl who gets possessed, but it's two.
Okay. All right. So doing a movie 50 years later, how were there any, I guess, what were the challenges and also what were some of the um yeah, I guess we can start there. What were some of the challenges that you guys had to, overcome with having that 50-year spread?
Well, the great news is we started with a great movie. I mean, The
Right.
Exorcist was nominated. It's an incredible movie. It has stood the test of time. If you watch it today, it is as scary
Oh
and as
yeah.
effective as it was. But look, we started with the master of horror, Jason Blum. He is the guy who understands modern horror. He's so successful. I think his collaboration with David Gordon Green on the Halloween new
Right.
franchise of the Halloween was so successful that he thought, let's tackle the biggest horror film of all. So I think in terms of challenges, the biggest one was to really make a movie that is as good as the original. That's the challenge. And I think they pulled together so many amazing artists and actors led by the incomparable Leslie Odom Jr. And so having the face of Leslie as the lead of this movie, I think is so impactful because this movie was number one worldwide with a Black lead. That's pretty great.
Yeah, 100%. Especially for a horror movie, I feel like horror movies have been, you know, shifting over, especially since um Candyman came out. It's been good that we've been
We're in
able
those
to have a
spaces.
shift in representation of
Yeah,
horror films.
absolutely. Look, we used to be the first ones to die in these movies. Okay. So we're staying around to the end. No spoiler alert, but it's great. It's so exciting for me, who, has made so many movies over the last 30 years, um, that tries to demolish stereotypes, right? And I
Right.
think having this Black man who's a single dad, so caring about his daughter is beautiful representation that we haven't seen.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think that that's definitely a good shift in horror movies. Yeah, having rather than repeating the same, you're having a different take on familiar story, which I feel like you said, Jason Blum is very, very good at it.
And not only that, Tony, but our movie opens up the world, opens up the community, right? It's not just a
Okay.
Catholic ritual. We're bringing in all faiths. We're bringing in root work. We're bringing in
Um,
evangelicals. We're bringing in the Catholics. Like, it's a movie that basically says it takes a village to defeat evil. And I think that's such a great metaphor for the world today. And that's part of what gives it such a contemporary vibe.
I wanted to ask if you mentioned, there's David Gordon Green, who's the director of the project, and you have Jason Blum, and you're an executive producer yourself. So when having this movie with so many, I guess, different, how do you ensure that the movie, the way that it started, is also the way that it ends? Was there a lot of change from the original script to the way that it turned out at the end, or was it just we saw this vision, this is how it ended up being?
I think David had a complete vision for the movie from the beginning. As with any movie, once you get into it, you see opportunities that you want to take advantage of. So things shifted a little. But
Mhm.
to be honest, David knew what he wanted to do. He knew that he wanted to dueling families. He knew that he wanted to bring in the community, that it wasn't just one guy against the devil, that it was a community. And Dowd, who is spectacular, plays a huge role in this movie. So I think it's all planned, but it's also fluid in the way that, you know, filmmakers make movies.
No, 100%. I don't know how much time we have left, but I'm just gonna keep asking you questions about
Okay.
you personally. So how did you get started in filmmaking, and what have you done a horror movie before? Was this your first one?
No, no,
That was your first one.
it's my first one. It's not my last. I
Okay,
really
good,
love the
good.
genre because my first movie was Boys in the Hood. So my first experience,
Really?
yes, was with John Singleton. We made 5 movies together: Boys in the Hood, Poetic Justice, Higher Learning, Hustle and Flow, and Black Snake Moan.
Awesome.
Miss him so much. But so I started as a reader. I started as a reader because I love to read. I actually read Peter Blatty's The Exorcist when I was 12 before I saw the movie. Um,
Really?
and so I come from a story point of view, a creative point of view, and have always really championed writer directors, especially Black writer directors or directors of color, whether it's Robert Rodriguez or Justin Simeon with Dear White People, or Craig Brewer, who, you know, I adore, telling these stories that have intense representation. And so that's how I started. I read Boys in the Hood. I flipped out and said, this movie has to get made. I made it my business to get it made. We got it made. It was nominated. It put John on the map, and it really started sort of a new wave of Black cinema in the 90s, which wasn't just comics and villains, but real people experiencing real life. And I'm so proud of that, because when you see yourself on screen, something clicks. You are valued. You are worthy to be up on that big screen. And I think it also sends a message to the audience that these people are valued. These people are worthy for the big screen. So that's been my mission, and I'm going to stick with it.
No, honestly, that's a really good mission to have, because at the same time you're like fulfilling what you want to do, but at the same time you're helping other people like feel the same thing that either you've always wanted to feel or like you felt in those certain times, like you said, which is noble, very noble.
Thank you.
Let me see. I'm gonna ask you one last question because I think we're coming up on our last minute. So I did want to ask, do you have a movie that you saw, growing up that maybe is other than Boys in the Hood? I mean, it could be Boys in the Hood as well, but that made you really just want to, make movies. Really?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I grew up on movies. I'm an avid reader. So literally, this isn't for show, but The Exorcist and The Godfather came out within a year of each other. And
Right.
the power of those 2 movies did something to me. It made me feel like there was a world, and I didn't even know director, producer. I had no idea. I just knew that telling stories on the screen was valuable, and I wanted to be part of it. And so the only way I knew was as a reader, because I have a degree in literature. I went in through reading. I came up through the studio system as an executive to become a producer. And I feel like I'm right where I need to be right now, because there's so many stories to tell, and I can use my considerable experience and success in helping get those stories told.